March 14, 1815. The rain-swept, muddy staging grounds of Lons-le-Saunier in eastern France. A heavy silence hangs over a force of 3,000 heavily armed French soldiers. They stand in strict formation, musket barrels gleaming in the dull morning light, awaiting the orders of their commander. Standing before them is a living legend of the Napoleonic Wars. He is Marshal Michel Ney, a man revered across the continent, a commander famously dubbed the bravest of the brave. He holds the legal authority of the King of France. He possesses the absolute mandate to deploy overwhelming lethal force. His strict orders are to march his men south, intercept a dangerous fugitive, and extinguish a rebellion before it can ignite a continent-wide cataclysm. But as Marshal Ney stares out at his men, he is not holding a battle plan. He is holding a single piece of paper. It is a letter from the very fugitive he has been sent to destroy. By all conventional military logic, a clash of arms is inevitable. Blood must be spilled to protect the crown. But today, there will be no battle. Today, using nothing but the psychological leverage contained within that one letter, an entire army is about to be stolen. To understand how the greatest military machine in Europe was hijacked without a single shot being fired, we must rewind exactly 2 weeks, to the shores of the Mediterranean. On the 1st of March, 1815, a small flotilla drops anchor at Gulf One, just 15 miles from Nice. A short, familiar figure steps onto the sand. Napoleon Bonaparte, the exiled emperor of the French, has escaped his island prison of Elba. He brings with him just 1,000 grenadiers of his imperial guard. It is a microscopic force. He has no cavalry, no treasury, and no supply lines. He is launching the most audacious gamble in military history. He intends to march on Paris and reclaim his empire. Napoleon holds no illusions about the immense danger of his situation. He must travel fast, winning support and turning the tables on his enemies before the royalist government can trap and arrest him. He avoids the main roads, marching his tiny entourage through narrow, winding mountain tracks, covering an astonishing 190 miles in just 6 days. The Bourbon monarchy, restored to power just a year prior, initially views the escape as a desperate, suicidal escapade. King Louis XVIII sits comfortably in the Tuileries Palace, convinced that an outlaw adventurer and a tiny band of followers pose no real threat to the French state. But the king gravely miscalculates the psychological state of his own military. On the 7th of March, outside the city of Grenoble, Napoleon's path is finally blocked. The 5th Line Regiment, sent by the king, has formed a firing line across the road. The royalist muskets are loaded. The order to fire is imminent. It is here that Napoleon deploys his true weapon, an absolute mastery of human psychology. He does not order his imperial guard to attack. Instead, he steps forward alone. He walks directly into the crosshairs of the royalist muskets. He throws open his grey coat, exposing his chest to the firing line, and projects his voice across the muddy field. "Soldiers of the 5th, he declares, if there is one among you who wishes to kill his emperor, he can do so. Here I am." A royalist captain desperately screams the command to fire. There is a suffocating silence. Then, a single, deafening roar erupts from the regiment. Cries of "Vive l'Empereur" ring out. The soldiers of the 5th Line break formation, weeping, throwing their shakos into the air, and rushing to embrace Napoleon's guardsmen. They have been won over. When news of the defection at Grenoble reaches Paris, The mood at the royal court shifts from mild disquiet to sheer, unadulterated panic. King Louis XVIII realizes that his legal authority means nothing if the men holding the muskets refuse to pull the triggers. He needs a commander of unquestionable loyalty. He needs a man whose reputation is so colossal that the army will obey him without hesitation. He calls upon Marshal Ney. Back in Paris, Marshal Ney stands before King Louis XVIII. Ney had won titles, riches, and glory under Napoleon, but he had sworn no oath to the Bourbons. He assures the terrified monarch that he will end this nightmare. With burning zeal, he makes a bold, infamous promise. "I will seize Bonaparte," Ney tells the king, "and I will bring him to you in an iron cage." Ney immediately marches south with a vanguard of 3,000 troops. He's a man on a mission, determined to uphold the law and prevent his beloved France from plunging into a catastrophic civil war. But as Ney advances toward Lons-le-Saunier, the psychological pressure begins to mount. Everywhere he looks, there are signs that Bourbon authority is collapsing. In Lyon, Napoleon is welcomed with massive celebrations. Whole regiments are defecting. Worse still, Ney hears the dangerous, undeniable grumbling of mutiny within his own ranks. Napoleon, marching north with a rapidly swelling army, knows exactly who is coming to stop him. He knows that if Ney's 3,000 men open fire, the illusion of his bloodless return will be shattered. Civil war will erupt. Napoleon knows he cannot defeat Ney in a prolonged military campaign. So, he bypasses the battlefield entirely. He writes Ney a letter. It is a masterpiece of psychological manipulation. Napoleon does not threaten Ney. He does not beg. He completely ignores Ney's treasonous pledge to the king. Instead, he speaks to the veteran soldier, the comrade in arms, and the hero of the empire. "I shall receive you as I did on the morrow of the Battle of the Moscow," Napoleon writes. In a single sentence, Napoleon cuts through years of political turmoil. First, he validates Ney's worth. Second, he forgives the betrayal. Third, he evokes the shared, sacred blood they spilled together on the frozen plains of Russia. On the morning of March 14th, Marshal Ney reads the letter. The psychological break is instantaneous and total. The Bourbon king, the legal oaths, and the promise of the iron cage evaporate from his mind. Ney steps out before his 3,000 troops. He does not read them the king's orders. He reads them a new proclamation. The cause of the Bourbons is lost forever, Ney roars to his men. Only the Emperor Napoleon is entitled to rule over our beautiful country. The staging ground erupts. There are deafening cheers amongst his men. Ney orders them to turn around, joining their forces with the very fugitive they were sent to destroy. With one letter, Napoleon has legally and completely stolen the royal army. The defection of Marshal Ney is the final, fatal blow to the Bourbon monarchy. On the 20th of March, King Louis flees the Tuileries Palace, heading for the safety of the Netherlands. That very evening, Napoleon enters Paris, acclaimed by former ministers, dignitaries, and soldiers. Without firing a single shot, the emperor has reclaimed his throne. History often teaches us that power resides in the hands of those who hold the law, the treasury, and the standing armies. But the theft of Ney's army proves a much darker, far more fascinating reality. Legal authority is merely an illusion if it is not backed by human belief. King Louis XVIII had the law, the crown, and the entire apparatus of the state. But Napoleon understood the minds of his soldiers. He knew that men do not willingly die for a legal decree. They die for glory, they die for brotherhood, and they die for leaders who make them feel invincible. By writing one perfectly calculated letter, Napoleon proved that the greatest weapon in any commander's arsenal is not the cannon or the musket. It is the human mind,